Alright, well, this is going to be a long video, so I apologize. I'll leave a link to the blog or whatever so you can come and read what I have here. I'm going to show a few of these other posts that I haven't talked about yet that kind of coincide with it. So, hopefully I can make this under an hour, but we'll see what's up. So anyway, last night, or really early in the morning or whatever, we got this story on CNN. 69 people on this Egypt airline flight 804. And then it later changed to 66, but I think I figured out why it changed to 66. But just interesting that they would supposedly mess up or whatever and write 69 instead of 66. This year there's been tons of 69 stuff. I've talked about back-to-back. There's a complete back-to-back theme that they've used, especially in sports and the NBA. They say back-to-back constantly, even when they don't have to. I mean, even the beginning of the game tonight, right before the game started, they even mentioned how Atlanta had never lost back-to-back in the playoffs this year. The most pointless thing to ever even mention, you know what I mean? So anyway, also, I talked about how I thought it was connected to the Warriors, but also I found that Cleveland Cavaliers also equal 69, just like back-to-back. So it could be connected to them. They're super connected to this royal theme that I'm talking about. Anyway, we also have Donald Trump, who is 69 years old. He actually turned 70 on Pope Francis's 1189th day as being Pope, which matches up to the chapters in the King James Bible and whatnot. Also, the moon landing was in 1969, and I've talked about how Prince, the singer, his death, it was on the night of a full moon. The Simpsons killed him on an episode on 11/2. Prince dies on the 112th day of the year. But moral of the story, on that Simpsons episode, they also killed Neil Armstrong and also George Clooney. And I talked about the movie Gravity. Also, Neil Armstrong, the first guy to supposedly walk on the moon. Also, in regards to World War, I didn't write that in here, but World War III actually equals 69 in Gematria. Israel this year is celebrating its 69 years of being recognized on November 29th. It's just pretty interesting, I guess. Israel was created by World War. Also, even in Obama's State of the Union address, he talked about how he's going to try to do something about cancer and whatnot. And of course, the symbol for cancer in astrology just so happens to look a lot like the 69. Also, in regards to cancer in Gematria equals 44, chemo equals 44. Obama's the 44th president. He also ran on hope, that in Gematria equals 44. There's more to that as well. But another interesting thing, how I mentioned World War, and like I'm saying, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but there's just a lot of interesting connections to it. And before I move on, I just want to show World War III and Gematria equals 69. So we also had Obama, who went to Cuba out of nowhere this year, right? Cuba in regards to the Cold War. He was the first active president to go to Cuba in 88 years. The last one was John Calvin Coolidge, who in Gematria equals 88. He went 6 months and 2 days after Pope Francis went there, or also 26 weeks and 2 days. Pope Francis went there on the 262nd day of the year. A lot more to that as well, but just interesting. Obama and Pope Francis go to Cuba. Anyway, the other day we got a story about how Obama is now going to go to Hiroshima. He's going to be the first active president since World War II to go to Hiroshima, right? Or Hiroshima, or however you pronounce it. And in this post, I didn't read the whole article. I started writing in here, I said, it just says late May, and I said my guess is either the 27th or the 28th. Just so happens that later on in the article it mentions that he is going on May 27th. And the reason that I mentioned that was because when Obama was in Cuba, we got the Belgium attacks. Belgium and Gematria equals 69. Also, Obama went to Cuba on March 20th. So literally, March 20th just so happens to be, if I have it up here, well, let me pull it up really quick. It just so happens to be 69 days after he went to Cuba. So he went to Cuba on this day. 69 days later, he's supposedly going to Hiroshima. World War II, the Cold War. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. Also, if you go from 5/27 to Obama's 55th birthday, it's a span of 69 days. So, I mean, just these 69 connections, World War III equals 69, Hiroshima equals 55 in Gematria, just, 69 days before Obama's 55th birthday. And like I said, I threw in some other connections that might be possible up here, which were interesting because 5/28 was JFK's birthday and whatnot. Obama was born on a day that leaves 149 days. 5/28 is the 149th day of the year. Lincoln died April 15th. That equals 149. McKinley was assassinated on 14/9. I even talked about skull and bones and whatnot previously. Anyway, the date numerology of May 27th just so happens to be 68, just like Barack Obama, Donald John Trump, Prince Charles, Pope Francis. I mean, some pretty powerful men right here, and they all have the same gematria. The article also mentions this guy, Ben Rhodes, a whole bunch. Rhodes in gematria equals 69. And then it says he'll be accompanied by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, or however you pronounce that, which equals 149. But Abe just reminds me of Abraham Lincoln. There's been a lot of connections to Obama, to Abraham Lincoln and whatnot, even opening up Ford's Theater when he first became president. Just this past year, he named the Thanksgiving turkeys Honest and Abe. There's been the theater shootings. Lincoln died in the theater. Tons of other stuff. All the Civil War type coding, with all the black versus white and whatnot. Anyway, May 27th, 2016 equals 161, just like American Civil War. Also this year, on August 6th, it will be the 71st anniversary of the bombing, the Hiroshima bombing. 8/6 this year is also the 219th day. I've mentioned this day a whole bunch in regards to the Golden State Warriors in back-to-back championships, which it could be connected to the Cavs, like I've said before. But the Philadelphia train wreck last year that happened at 9:23 p.m., and then Pope Francis came to America on his 923rd day as Pope, went to the White House the next day at 9:23 on 9:23. But moral of the story, that Philadelphia train wreck was super connected to lots of events. If you go from that Philadelphia train wreck to Pope Francis's 79th birthday, a span of 219 days. If you go to the 219th day and you went to Pope Francis's 3rd anniversary of being Pope, it's a span of 219 days. So, an interesting number. And right here, just an interesting picture that CNN puts with the article. Take it, interpret it as what you want, but this to me looks just like an eyeball, like a one eye. All of the one eye symbolism, the Eye of Horus and whatnot. We also got a video that was a minute 45. Remember Obama from Chicago and whatnot. Chicago, Illinois equals 145. JFK even avoided an assassination in Chicago. All kinds of other stuff, but they also, in this article, make sure to let us know that his trip's not about an apology. Apology equals 91. Hiroshima apology equals 191. Society of Jesus 191. Black Panther Party 191. Even James Garfield, the 20th president who died 79 days after being shot in the year 1881. He died on September 19th, right, the day that Pope Francis went to Cuba, the 262nd day of the year. But if you write that out, it equals 91. He was also born on November 19th, that equals 91. I've even mentioned Ghostbusters 2 equals 191, because remember, the lady said that the end of the world would be Valentine's Day in 2016, and an alien told her that or whatever. So I know the world didn't end. I never thought the world was going to end that day. But just an interesting connection considering they're coming out with the new Ghostbusters pretty soon. That's going to have just women. And if you go from Valentine's Day to the day he's supposed to go there, it's a span of 103 days, also 3 months, 13 days. Also even 14 weeks, 5 days, a lot like the 145. But Pope Francis became the Pope on 3/13 of 2013. Also, the day that Pope Francis went to Cuba, 9/19, leaves 103 days left until the end of the year. So, who knows? It's just pretty interesting. Wanted to point out some extra 69s and how it may tie in to something to do with World War and whatnot, Even, I think today maybe, or maybe it was yesterday. I kind of got lost in my days here, but they had the article about the Russian plane flyby on the boat and whatnot, the U.S. boats and whatnot. We even had the story about China feeling threatened by our boats getting too close or something. You know what I mean? So it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen, but it's just a lot of interesting connections. So anyway, back to the whole point here. This EgyptAir Flight 804. Hopefully you're still with me. It's connected to a whole bunch of things that I've mentioned previously. So they changed it from 69 to 66 people. And I'll get into that in just a second. But the first thing that I think of when I think of a missing airline is this stupid Malaysian Airlines flight that they just keep pounding into your head and they keep saying they're going to find it and whatever for years now. It's been, over 2 years? Random funny story about this plane here, too. I dressed up as it on Halloween. I made I just took cardboard or whatever and I painted it all up, and people thought I was the World Trade Center, which makes no sense to me. But, moral of the story, this thing was huge, and I put it in the back of the truck, and I had stuff on top of it, and it stayed on the way there, but on the way home, it completely blew out, and I didn't even know it, and I got home, and I was like, where is the plane? And it was completely missing, so you know that some farmer probably found it in his field and thought that he found, the debris for the missing Malaysian airline or something, but yeah, on with the chlorophyll, though, here. So, we get pounded with this story, and then now we have this EgyptAir Flight 804. If you go from the date that this one went missing to the date of today or whatever, where this new one went missing, a span of 804 days. So, EgyptAir Flight 804 goes missing 804 days after this Malaysian airline. And there's a lot of interesting connections to both of these, to the royal family, or princes at least. And we just had the death of Prince. So anyway, this one goes missing on March 8th. In Gematria, Prince the small way equals 38, Prince the big way equals 65. And then in Jewish Gematria, it equals 197. And it might sound like a lot, but it's actually connected to all kinds of things here. So, the missing Malaysian airline was on 38, just like 38. Prince Charles is the royal that I've been talking a lot, because if Queen Elizabeth dies, he'll become the new king. His birthday is on November 14th, 1948. If you go from November 14th, 2013, so before the missing Malaysian airline, he just turned 65 years old. So, and it was also 3 months, 22 days before the missing Malaysian airline, right? So we got the 322, the Skull and Bones. The Belgium attack this year happened on 322. There's also a span of 114 days after he turned 65, And remember, the reason 65 is so important, Prince the Big White equals 65. He is a prince. It's also a span of 114 days, which is just interesting. Right now we're in the 114th Congress. Also, look at these in gematria here. World War equals 114, Holocaust 114, Pearl Harbor 114. LeBron James is just, he's connected to the royals. He's King James. Tons of other connections I'll show. But if you write out 114, the big way it's 212, the small way 95. Just like if you write out Prince Charles of Wales. Identical gematria. So also, in Jewish gematria, LeBron equals 197, Prince equals 197, Charles, Prince Charles, Charles equals 190 or 207. But if you write out 207, it equals 197. And remember, in regards to the 923 stuff, LeBron James also shot 9 of 23 on 11-4, a lot like 114, earlier in the season, 2015. Look when he did it. 197 days before today, 5/19, before this flight crashes. The Cleveland Cavaliers, look at the total score tonight. They won with 108 points, 108 to 89. That's a total score of 197. King James equals 89. Golden State Warriors equals 108. There's some other interesting 108 connections I mentioned later on. If you go from Prince Charles' birthday this year to today, or May 19th, a span of 187 days, which reminds me a lot of the homicide code, the 187. Who knows? It's also a span of 6 months, 5 days. Remember, Prince equals 65 the big way. Prince Charles also turned 67 years old on November 14th of 2015. And the singer Prince, his birthday was on 6/7. It's amazing how they connect all these. Charles, the big way, equals 66, just like LeBron equals 66. So it really puts it in perspective why they changed 69 passengers to 69 people on board to 66 people. In regards to more basketball, and like I'm saying, I've said this in my last video, how it doesn't matter to me who wins, but they're using these teams for whatever the reason. They use the players, they use the teams, they take the scores, and they code them to other events, just like this missing flight. Anyway, today also comes 66 days after Pi Day. Pi Day 3/14, March 14th, right? The day that we got the Kansas Amtrak derailment. It was also Steph Curry's 28th birthday. And I never noticed before, but 66 days is also 2 months, 5 days sometimes. So just an interesting thing to point out. If LeBron wins the finals this year, he'll be 3-4 in NBA finals. If he loses, he'll be 2-5 in NBA finals. And there's more connections I could describe to this, but I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, you know, the 66 stuff. 66 days after Pi Day. The Paris attacks. Also 6 months, 6 days after this. And that's just interesting because this flight took off from Paris. It also left from, you know, Charles de Gaulle Airport, or however you say that. I mean, just think about it. The Charles reference. We even had the Charlie Hebdo. Right after the Paris attacks, Charlie Sheen had HIV all of a sudden. Also, this airport named after this guy here. He was the president of the French Republic until the year 1969, right? The year that we supposedly went to the moon and all that. He also, you know, was the president during the Cold War. So, interesting with the Cuba references. Also, a Cavalier is a follower of King Charles in the English Civil War. King Charles I was executed in the year 1649, and then in 1651 his son King Charles II, and also his other son, well, King Charles II was banished to France, and his other son King James II left to France on his own accord. But France is where Charles I's wife was, so that's where King Charles II's mom was from. She even died in Paris. It was also a big piece to the English Civil War because she was a Catholic and she didn't speak English, and a lot of people hated Catholics at the time and whatnot. King Charles II and King James II were also the last kings of England or Britain, or however you want to say it, that were Catholic. Flight 804 also went missing over the Mediterranean Sea in Gematria. That equals 152, also 71. King Charles, the small way equals 71, just like Mediterranean Sea. This 152 is also interesting. Pennsylvania equals 152. If you write out the word 79, it equals 152. Pope Francis turned 79 in December. LeBron James, his full name equals 79 with his middle name and whatnot. Lots of other connections. But on to Prince William here. So this is Prince Charles' son. He's the third in line, or the second in line to be the king. If Prince Charles dies and Queen Elizabeth dies, then he would be the king. 5/19, a super special day to him, because he's 33 years old. He's also 33 years younger than his dad. And also 5/19 just so happens to be 33 days before his 34th birthday. If you write out King William, it equals 57. Remember, Prince died at the age of 57. It was connected to Prince's protege, who died on 2/15, Vanity, who died at the age of 57. I talked about how his death was super connected to the moon. Moon equals 57. King George's son, or King William's son, or Prince William's son is Prince George. George also equals 57. Obama's also the 57th term president right now. So the next president to take office, or, well, the next term, I guess, will be the 58th term. And there's a ton of other 57 connections. I just want to keep moving on, trying to make it somewhat short. But also, another interesting thing about today's flight, it had 56 passengers. It left from Paris, France. Paris, France equals 56. It was going to Cairo, Egypt, that equals 56. They're probably going to blame it on ISIS. ISIS equals 56. Lots of 56 stuff in regards to this year and whatnot. Black Lives Matter, 56. Climate change, 56. Osama bin Laden, not this year, but Osama bin Laden equals 56. Saddam Hussein equals 56. Adolf Hitler equals 56. President equals 56. In regards to the Civil War stuff I was talking about, Abraham Lincoln died at the age of 56 in the year 65. He died in the month of April, the only month that equals 56. But when I saw this 56 stuff, and then also in regards to the date, a while back I did a whole bunch of stuff about Teen Wolf. It was all coded to the All-Star Week last year in 2015 when Zach LaVine wore the Space Jam. He did the Space Jam dunk or whatever, and Zach LaVine was a 19-year-old Teen Wolf, and he won the Slam Dunk contest. And then the night before, Andrew Wiggins won the Rising Star Challenge MVP, who was also a Teen Wolf. So, and there was a bunch of Teen Wolf stuff. I talked about how it was coded to the Nebraska Cornhuskers, because in the movie Teen Wolf they have Nebraska Cornhusker stuff in the background, even though the movie has nothing to do with Nebraska. It wasn't filmed there. It wasn't set there. It doesn't really make that much sense. Nebraska's new coach in football is Mike Riley, who comes from Oregon State, the Oregon State Beavers. In the movie Teen Wolf, they are the Beavers, and it is based off of the Oregon State Beavers. So, I mean, there's no way that it's not planned like that, you know? And there's a lot more. I've made tons of videos on it. Just wanted to prove the point of what I'm talking about. Kevin Garnett was the original Teen Wolf. He came out of high school, drafted to the Timberwolves, so he was the original Teen Wolf. Kevin Garnett equals 56 in Gematria, just like Wolf. There's a lot of other 56 stuff around him. I wrote in here traded back to the T-Wolves. I think his first game back was on the 56th day of the year. But he was traded for Thaddeus Young, who equals 56, also a former Philadelphia 76er who wore number 21. Garnett also connected to 12 and 21. Flip Saunders, who died this year, became the head coach on the 21st game of Garnett's rookie season. Garnett wore number 21. The T-Wolves finished 12th in the West, and they only won 21 games that season. Garnett left to Boston after 12 seasons. Then he came back to the Timberwolves. Flip Saunders dies right before the start of the 21st season. And also, there's a big thing in regards to Malik Sealy. It was supposedly one of Kevin Garnett's good friends. Malik Sealy died leaving Kevin Garnett's birthday party. Kevin Garnett was born on today, 5/19. So I didn't mention that before. Kevin Garnett turned 40 years old on 5/19. And this guy right here, he died from leaving Kevin Garnett's birthday party. It was Kevin Garnett's 24th birthday party. But look at the picture here. So he's a pro, and they still have his college picture up on Wikipedia, wearing number 21. What is the purpose of that? You know, it doesn't make that much sense. He wore number 2 for the Timberwolves. Number 21, right? I just mentioned all these 21 stuff in regards to Kevin Garnett. He was even born on February 1st, 2/1. And the reason that he really stuck out to me, you know, his name, Malik Sealy, he's named after Malcolm X, because Malcolm X changed his name to Malik El Shabazz and whatnot. Malik Sealy's dad just so happened to be a former bodyguard of Malcolm X. And we've seen all of the Black Panther type coding, especially back to the Super Bowl. You know, the Black Panther lost to the White Bronco. Beyonce came out with the whole Black Panther stuff and had the X, just like Michael Jackson. Bruno Mars even wore all black and whatnot. The Super Bowl score was even 24-10. X is the 24th letter. X in Roman numerals is also 10, so 24-10 was like XX. The Super Bowl was coded to the 1985 Bears, who won Super Bowl 20, Super Bowl XX. Malcolm X, though, just so happened to be born on May 19th. The same day as Kevin Garnett, the same day as this plane wreck. Malcolm in Gematria equals 24. X equals 24. His real name, Malcolm Little. Little equals 24. So just interesting that Malik Sealy dies on Kevin Garnett's 24th birthday as well. Also, if you write out Malik El Shabazz, it equals 56 and 146, just like Kevin Garnett. Identical. Also want to point out Kevin Garnett is 51 years younger than Malcolm X, who died 51 years ago. And if you write out just Malcolm, it equals the 69 that I talked about in the beginning. Malik Sealy, also in this movie Eddie that I've mentioned a while back, he's one of the main characters. This movie came out in 1996. A lot of the stuff this year goes back to 96, the 95-96 Chicago Bulls. Tupac's mother dies, you know. Tupac even turned 25 years old the day the Chicago Bulls won the NBA Finals that year. His mom dies at the age of 69, you know, 96, 69, the mirrors. Tons more to that, but just wanted to point that out. And when I talked about this movie before, I talked about how it was the death of John Hot Rod Williams. He died on December 11th, 2015. He was a former Cleveland Cavalier. If you read here, I know you can't read it very well, but if you read in the movie description, it even brings up that there's like all about the Cavaliers. It even says, including Alex English as the Cleveland Cavaliers coach. Alex English, his most recent thing that he's known for is coaching the Sacramento Kings, or assistant coach of the Sacramento Kings. There's also just a big main scene in this movie where they play the Cavs. I can't remember it all. I know I made a video or posted about it at one point, but interesting. It's a Whoopi Goldberg movie though, right? And Whoopi Goldberg turned 60 the day of the Paris attacks. She also got her breakthrough role as an actor in the movie The Color Purple, right? Prince and the purple and the royalty. I mean, it's just pretty crazy. Her name in gematria equals 57 the small way, her real name, and 156 the big way. Whoopi Goldberg equals 84 and 156. So her name and her her alias, her stage name, both equal 156. And then the 57 that's even connected. Also in numerology, like 84, you take out the 0, so 804 is 84. And one of the main reasons that I bring all of this back up with the Kevin Garnett and the Malik Sealy and whatnot, it's about the Minnesota Timberwolves. Prince is from Minnesota. He died in Minnesota. Minnesota equals 38, just like Prince, just like death. There's a whole bunch of 38s that I didn't write in here that tie into the death of Prince as well. But I think you get the point. So also, like I said, Kevin Garnett turned 40 years old today, the same day as this missing plane, the same day as Malcolm X. He has all these connections to Flip Saunders. Flip Saunders died on October 25th, 2015. The interesting thing was that he was born in Cleveland. There's a whole bunch of 223 around him. He was born on February 23rd, announced that he had cancer on the 223rd day of the year. The first game of last season, they played the Lakers. It was a tribute to Flip Saunders and whatnot. The total score even totaled up to 223 points. The word Masonic equals 223. The Synagogue of Satan, 223. Friday the 13th equals 223. The day of the Paris attacks and whatnot. Also, if you go from Flip Saunders' death to 519, a span of 207 days. Remember, 207 equals 197, just like Prince and LeBron. And if you write out Charles, it equals 207. Also interesting, I noticed that today was also 28 days after the death of Prince and Queen Elizabeth's birthday. The plane was going to Cairo, Egypt, right? Cairo equals 28. Egypt equals 28. The 28th prime is 107. If you read out King Charles, it equals 107. I threw in this earthquake just because there's been lots of foreshadowing to earthquake in previous videos that I've talked about, and earthquake equals 107. So it's 66 days after Steph Curry's 28th birthday. 66 people are missing. 66 days after the Kansas Amtrak derailment. Kansas in gematria equals 65, right? Just like Prince. Just like Philadelphia, the small way equals 65, and 101. Air Egypt equals 101. The Fresh Prince is from Philadelphia. Also, I just wrote it out as a words or whatever. Egypt Flight 804 equals 175. Egypt Flight 804 equals 165. Both numbers that I actually talked about in all these videos where YouTube is copyright striking my videos on certain days, and also the comment video that I just made the other night. Anyway, the 175, Flight 175 on 9/11 hit the South Tower. It had 56 passengers on it. Then it caused the building to collapse 56 minutes later. South Tower in gematria even equals 56, just like Osama bin Laden. If you write out United Airlines Flight 175, it equals 165. So, kind of interesting. I also mentioned how the 165 stuff is connected to my birthday. YouTube randomly went back to 2014 and gave my video about 22 Jump Street a copyright strike 165 days after my birthday. The movie 22 Jump Street came out on June 13th, which this year is the 165th day of the year. 22 in Gematria equals 165. Somehow I also put the video up 165 days after the movie came out. June 13th also just so happens to be the day that King Charles I married his wife Henrietta Maria in the year 1625, and she died in the year 1669. Also, if you go from November 10th to May 19th, it's a span of 191 days. Also 6 months, 9 days, a lot like 69. Society of Jesus also equals 191 like the days. Black Panther Party, 191 days. I put this one in here, who knows if it's going to happen, just an interesting connection. Second championship equals 191. Not necessarily back-to-back, but Oklahoma City, where it used to be the Seattle Supersonics, and if they win the championship, it would be their second championship. Also, the reporting said that the plane took off at 23:09, which is also like 11:09 at night. The 9/11 in reverse. If you did it as a date, in Europe they would even write 9/11, September 11th, as 11/9. So interesting. The video, the original video they gave us, was 1:08 long, right? 1:08 is also 68 seconds. Prince Charles equals 68. 108 I'll actually talk about a little bit more here in a minute. It also says it's called Airbus A320. Airbus A320 equals 119, a lot like the time that it took off. It took off from Charles de Gaulle Airport. This guy died on 11/9 of 1970. Interesting, he died, that would be 45 years ago. The 45th prime number is 197, just like Prince, just like LeBron. But this 2309, a lot like September 23rd, the day I talked about with Pope Francis and whatnot. A huge day was foreshadowed in multiple things, multiple media articles, movies, clear back to even Space Jam. Michael Jordan retired after 9 seasons wearing number 23. Even in the movie Space Jam, they show his 23 jersey next to his Olympic jersey, which is number 9. And they show them together, the 9 and the 23. A whole bunch of other connections, but the Malaysia airline had 239 people on it. And March 8th, the day that it went missing, leaves 9 months, 23 days in the year. I mean, what are the odds of that? I don't know why I threw this in here, right here, but I saw this in the article as well. It says this flight, the Flight 804, was traveling at 37,000 feet, traveling at 519 miles per hour when it vanished. So it vanished going 519 miles an hour on 519? You don't think that's interesting? I mean, come on. Also, back on 3/29, we also had a story about EgyptAir and a hijacker trying to take over the plane and whatnot. 3/29, right? 9/23, 3/29, 23/09. I mean, it's never ending. But in the story, it even says that once they caught the guy, the Cypriot Foreign Ministry said, it's over. They tweeted that. It's over equals 108. Like I mentioned, the video up there was 1:08 or whatever. It's over is also the headline that they used when Golden State Warriors lost their first game of the season this year on 12-12. They just so happened to lose to the Bucks, who equal 56. It's over in Gematria equals 108. But if you go from 12/12 to March 29th, a span of 108 days as well. A lot of the articles, the news announcer people, they're not saying EgyptAir Flight 804. They're saying EgyptAir 804. Like the O, like the letter, and not 0, right? So who knows? I just wrote it in here. EgyptAir 804 equals 108. Also tonight, the Cleveland Cavaliers scored 108 points. 108 to 89. What are the odds of that with a total score of 197 points? If you go from 12/12 to today, a span of 5 months, 7 days, the 57 stuff again. If you go from March 29th to 3/29 to today, span of 51 days, also 1 month, 20 days, also 7 weeks, 2 days. King William equals 120, like 1 month, 20 days. Prince William equals 72, a lot like 70 weeks, 2 days. I also mentioned before, Cleveland equals 51, Cleveland Cavs equal 51, LeBron James equals 51. They play in Quicken Loans Arena, which Quicken Loans equals 51. The sports curse was also 51 years old until the Stipe Miocic or whatever supposedly beat the curse in UFC or whatever the other night. And also in regards to why they might be coding Cleveland Cavaliers even more so, is because I've talked about how the 2016 Republican National Convention is in Cleveland, and it starts on 7/18 or July 18th. Interesting, the second day would be July 19th, which can be written as 19/7, a lot like 197. That day also leaves 165 days in the year. So definitely could be something interesting about that day. Also in regards to the 51 stuff, I mentioned a whole bunch, in regards to it. Like Donald Trump is 15 years, 51 days older than Obama. When the Lakers beat the Warriors this year in basketball, it just so happened to be Kobe Bryant's 1,551st game ever. Also, Queen Victoria, who was the previous longest reigning English/British monarch ever, she died 51 years, 15 days before Queen Elizabeth II became the Queen on 2/6 of 1952. But just interesting, she's now the longest reigning monarch. Pope Francis also turned 15 years old in 1951. Philadelphia equals 101 and 65. 1915 was 101 years ago. 1951 was 65 years ago. Philadelphia also connected to the 56, the Declaration of Independence that was signed there, was signed by 56 signers. The first one being John Hancock, who died at the age of 56. The last original signer was Charles Carroll. He was the last living person. He died 56 years after it was signed. He was Charles Carroll III. If Queen Elizabeth dies, Prince Charles will become King Charles III. So pretty interesting. Also in regards to all the 239 stuff and whatnot, like I said, the 2309, the United States is in its 239th year until 7/4 this year, so July 4th. Or technically it could be 8/2 depending on how you look at it, but, interesting. But I actually finished it in under an hour, so awesome. Have a good one.